Hello, it's Friday the 9th of May 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today, Patrick Henningson. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And by video link, we have Mark Anderson. Now, later in the programme, we're going to be covering the continuing drive for war. We're going to be covering fluoride in the US and the UK and also online safety. But we're going to kick off with this UK-US trade deal. Big news conference tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The Oval Office was what Trump was declaring on Wednesday. He went on to say that it was a major trade deal with representatives of a big and highly respected country, the first of many. And then yesterday morning, he revealed that it wasn't India or China, it was the UK, a country which, as I'm sure Mark is about to demonstrate in a second, is already in a trade surplus. The US is already a trade surplus with the UK. So the question is that a big deal? Now, I just want to show this image of Peter Mandelson, the UK's ambassador to the United States, looking down over the shoulder of Donald Trump. I just thought the positioning of people in the room was quite amusing. But I'm not sure what we say about the Prince of Darkness there.
He's still got that gravitas, doesn't he, Mike?
Yes.
He really does.
So,
he hasn't lost it.
No, indeed. So, Mark, let's come over to you. And what are your thoughts on this deal?
Well, of course, it's a little early to tell in terms of the nitty-gritty details, but the White House, and I don't know what slides you might want to show just to kick it off, the White House is announcing a great deal for America, President Trump's breakthrough trade deal. And we also see the Department of Commerce headline, together with the U.S. trade rep, announcing the historic trade deal with the United Kingdom to open markets, raise revenue, and strengthen security. And I listed here some of the organizations in the U.S. that commented favorably. They were quoted by the White House: National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Renewable Fuels, mainly ethanol there, Growth Energy CEO Emily Skor, the Job Creators Network, Consumer Brands Association President Melinda Hochstad, that's the packaged goods industry, and the American Farm Bureau Federation President. And they were, among others, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, the Nebraska governor, the agricultural secretary of the state of Iowa were all commenting favorably. We also have a banking-related thing here going on, where the HSBC USA president and CEO Lisa McGow said today's landmark US-UK trade agreement marks a significant step in strengthening transatlantic economic ties and expanding opportunities for businesses and investors. As a British headquartered bank with a strong US footprint, we're uniquely positioned to help American companies and investors seize new growth opportunities domestically in the UK and beyond. And they're ready to leverage their position, they're saying. And that's a quote from the White House of that banker. And at any rate, I did some research. There's also, of course, the press release from the government of the UK that this is their headline: landmark economic deal with United States saves thousands of jobs for British car makers and the steel industry. Those are the apparent announced beneficiaries, the main beneficiaries of this trade deal: car makers in the steel industry. And the prime minister is saying thousands of jobs are being saved in the process. The U.S. also, we can mention here with this chart, this is the first 3 months of 2025, has been running, and in previous years as well, has been running a trade surplus with the UK. However, in January of this year, they were close to parity. People can look up this chart through the Department of Commerce in the United States. Or excuse me, I believe that's it. Wait a minute. I want to get that right. The chart comes from the Census department, the census.gov department of the U.S. government. At any rate, there tends to be about a $5 to $7 to $8 billion surplus on the side of the U.S. with the UK as a general rule. Although, again, in January, trade was relatively balanced this year. The gap was only a little over $1 billion. And in trade terms, that's a fairly close gap, the way it goes. But at any rate, the many things that have been listed on both sides of the pond about this include automotive tariffs. The UK will see tariffs on its first 100,000 car exports to the reduced from 27.5 to 10%. The Commerce Secretary of the U.S. is saying that $10 billion worth of Boeing planes will be sold to the U.K. by the U.S. The U.S. will remove tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the U.K. and reduce those particular tariffs to zero, according to the U.S. government. And we were concerned about farmers. They're saying there's going to be unprecedented market access for British farmers with protections on food standards maintained. This is according to the UK government. We have agreed on new reciprocal market access on beef, with UK farmers given a quota for 13,000 metric tons of beef. There will be no weakening, they're saying, no weakening of of UK food standards on imports. The UK is not going to weaken its food standards, and apparently there's no chance, or there's no indication that chlorinated chicken from the US will be sent to the UK. I think that's been a concern. So that's some of what's going on. It appears to have reasonable benefits for both sides. But of course, there's a lot to unpack when you look at these trade deals. But that's what I've got so far, mainly.
Thank you, Mark. Well, let's just look in a bit more detail at what the UK government is saying this is doing for us. So here's the graphic that we're putting out on Twitter today. The UK and USA have signed a deal to reduce tariffs. Here's what it won't be doing. So this is what they're wanting to focus on. And the first thing that they were focusing on was high food and drink standards. So they're saying the government has been clear that we will only ever sign trade agreements which align with the UK's national interests. Hormone-treated beef and chlorinated chicken is and will remain illegal in the UK. Any US imports will continue to need to meet UK food standards. So they're saying that, in fact, as a result of that, that it's written into the text of this agreement, and as a result of that, there's no chance of these products coming into the UK. But there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years about chlorinated chicken, Patrick. But what about this hormone imbued beef? What's that all about?
Well, the question is, Mike, we talked about this at length before the program. You could say, oh, we're not going to have synthetic hormone-infused American beef coming into the British market, and of course, chlorinated chicken. But how do you really regulate all of this stuff? Because the U.S. market is just becoming so deregulated. And I'll put up here a study by the NHS up on screen here. Endocrine disruptors, that's really what we're talking about. And the correlation or the causation for obesity. Now, America has an obese problem. Everybody knows that. And Britain and Europe are catching up very quickly to this as well. So this is an important study here. And there's the gist of this whole thing is right here, endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're calling them obesogens. So they've actually got a name for these chemicals and these synthetic hormones. And they're promoting weight gain, and they're saying that it includes compounds to which the human population is exposed to in daily life through their use of pesticides and herbicides that get into the food chain via the agricultural processes, pesticides and herbicides. Industrial, household products, even Fairy Liquid and Unilever products fall also into these categories as well, flame retardants, etc. So this is a big problem here. It's a massive problem. And it also will go to the Soil Association right here. And so this is actually a great resource if you want to know where things are at the moment. So you just go to the Soil Association and they'll tell you all about, where's the hormonal beef and so forth. And also the carcinogens. There's a carcinogen problem with a lot of these things. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and the lawsuits speak for themselves on this. Here is a lot of great details. Again, the Soil Association is really up to date on legislation, regulation. So it's a great resource. So I encourage people to go there. Bottom line, Mike, though, U.S. is cutting tariffs on British metals and cars. U.K. is cutting tariffs on USA food. But here's a good question, Mike. When we're talking about the automotive industry, what's Britain trying to do? No combustion engines by what? 2030? Is that the target? Or have they moved
2040 is more likely, I think.
So are you going to have a situation where Jaguar is going to be producing combustion engines for a U.S. market?
No, because Jaguar has already announced they're not going to be producing combustion engines for any market. They're moving full electric.
Cooper Mini, Jaguar. But it's just interesting because the U.S. is on a very different Green New Deal path than Britain. And British and European countries are basically have committed themselves to economic hara-kiri in the Japanese sense,
Right.
Where the U.S. is going basically eschewing the whole climate agenda very, very rapidly. So you're going to have a divergence of markets. Could be a gap in the market for some,
Innovative
entrepreneurial,
British company, yes.
good British engineering companies.
Perhaps. Now, coming back onto the food issue again, we've talked about beef, we talked about chicken. What about pork? Because in 2020, the British company Genus announced that they had succeeded in using CRISPR technology to gene edit pigs to protect them from porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, otherwise known as PRRS. Well, you'd be glad to know that these pigs have been approved this week by the US Food and Drug Administration to enter the food chain. They will be sold. So my question then is, will they be sold on the UK market following this deal? Well, remember that it's the UK which leads the world, at least on a legislative point of view, on the question of gene editing. So I'm going to suggest that perhaps the answer to that is yes. But coming back onto the other things that won't be covered or won't be problems as a result of this trade deal, according to the government at least, it won't impact the NHS, they say, because any impact on the NHS, any devastating destruction of that particular organisation, the UK government's quite capable of doing that for itself. It doesn't need a trade deal with the United States to do it. It won't harm UK farmers, they say.
Again,
they felt the need to reiterate that twice.
Because that's their job, the government,
exactly,
to harm UK farmers.
Once again, and it won't mean American companies in the UK will avoid paying digital services tax. Now, I have to say, Patrick, this is something that you, Mark, and I have been banging on about since 2013, this whole business of multinational digital companies not paying tax in countries that they're providing services into. This is a continuing effort by the British government with this digital services tax to get a handle on this whole thing. And so apparently this deal will not impact that in any way, shape or form. And finally, it won't rule out broader deal in the future. And I think this is the key takeaway from this whole thing. What we're seeing is a first step here. And if they're saying that hormone-infused beef and chlorinated chicken are not part of this particular deal, then don't worry, there's the opportunity in the future to expand this much broader. So we need to keep an eye on what they're doing.
Yeah, and we know how to devastate and wipe out UK agriculture and livestock, don't we? Just by announcing outbreaks of viruses, magic little invisible particles like foot and mouth and bird flu. And there you go. Let's cull the entire livestock and bird population just to be safe,
Absolutely.
Even though it's not deadly to humans, we still need to, or it's not even deadly to birds or even cows. Let's just kill them all just in case.